talk about black holes, and I will focus on a particular state of black hole. Is the dormant black hole or quiescent black hole, because black holes are not always making a party, are not very active. Most of their life are in a very quiescent mode, and with certain activity, they still have their own going on, but in general, they are in very low active mode. And we know that because the large majority of black holes in our universe are in that state, and very few are active. Um, it's difficult to spot them as higher and higher resolution because they are very underluminous. I mean, the nucleus where they are associated. So the uh, the hints for the signature of their tiny activity, or sometimes not so tiny, but certain activity is difficult to catch because if they're in a galaxy, there underneath is smear out this activity or this luminosity in the light of the galaxy. In a galaxy, or it could be in, we see black holes in many places, in globular clusters, in dwarfs, in black hole binaries, in many places. They are always, most of the time, in this low state, difficult to spot. More easier in black hole binaries, in stars, but in extragalactic, it's complicated. We are getting farther and farther, spotting more of them, a much higher ratio. Now with James Webb, there is a good boost for finding them. There are techniques or ways we think we can get them, but overall, low activity. Our best representative of low activity black hole is our own Sagittarius A. Okay, Sagittarius A emits a luminosity with 10 to minus 10 of his potential. Potential in, in terms of what is capable to do it according to his black hole mass, his Eddington luminosity. So very low activity. And but we have other sources like the bright quasar in the sky, this one, 3273, it emits at the normal rate active black holes do 10% of the Eddington luminosity. So you see this huge range on it. There is a difference in black hole mass, 10 to the 6, 10 to the 8 here in the quasar. But if I show you M87, which is one of the highest black hole masses, is also very low, in very low quiescent mode, okay? 10 to minus 5 luminosity or creation in Eddington units. So the point is that, why the most of the time are like that? They have the potential to emit, to be powerful, but they don't decide to be that the case. So the first thing is that maybe there is no material to accrete, because this all goes through accretion. The luminosity goes according to the accretion. So I will try to show you in the presentation that there is plenty of material for active and no active, plenty of material ready for accretion. But I will show that this material, the way it settles in the central parsecs is important. And we tend to see nuclear spirals when this material settles in a nuclear spiral. I will show you how it looks like. The flow is getting slow. So it's a hint for a low accretion. It's not the solution because this is simply what we try to determine as an inflow rate, while we had to get still to the accretion disk, the accretion rate. So I will pass then to the accretion disk, which is what really master the level of the mode of accretion of the black hole. And I will try to convey the idea that in quiescent black holes, the accretion disk is there, is not really efficient, simply that it gets cooler, it gets bigger, therefore cooler, and therefore less powerful. And so less radiative emission in the nucleus, it triggers less radiative emission in the galaxy they are, in the nucleus they are. Okay. So all what I want to say form parts of this Parsec project, which is a multi-weapon investigation of the central parsec of galaxies. We cover a wide spectral range as much as we can because we want to get a complete picture of how these central galaxies work in general, and in particular the black hole. And as I said, we cover a wide range in activity for very low active black hole, 10 minus 10, like Andromeda and black hole, or our Milky Way, to bright quasars, 10%. So let's go first to see how the material is surrounding the central passes, how it is. So I'm going to start with a very famous object. This is a very standard black hole, 1068. Why active? It's an active black hole, quite prototype if you want. And you have on the left side an optical image of the galaxy central kiloparsec, and the right you have an infrared image. And you see that already in the optical image a lot of dust, because you see all this oscuration that goes around. Let's see all these fingers of dust around. In the infrared is very clean because infrared is transparent dust. So the way we unveil the structure of what is going behind the center, which is very luminous and it really blind us, is to make a color ratio. A color image is simply divided the infrared image by the optical image. If we do that, the ratio will simply enhance all these regions where we see oscuration, because we divide by something that is very obscure, very low. Okay. So this is the ratio I'm going to show you. This is simply dividing the infrared by the optical image. Both images, that's important. We have very high angular solution. This is adaptive optics, the infrared image. This is space telescope. So we don't create, or we care not to create artifacts when we do this ratio. And we need a cross matching good alignment in between the images, of course. So you see, we have removed all the brighted emission in the center. Is nice, and we started to see certain structure. What you see in all these dust maps or ratio images I show you, when you see something bright, colorful, here means the location where dust is. Okay, so you see that a lot of structure, a lot of dust is close to the center. Center is the bright point. So let's go a bit more zooming in the central 100 parsecs or so. And so you see how the structure is in dust. It's quite diffuse, inhomogeneous. There are patches where there is no dust. There are others where there is, close to the center, formed like a kind of bracelet around with certain openings. Okay, we can translate this immediately in optical depth excitation. This is the same, but now we measure the depth of the oscuration at different locations. Here, getting closer to the center. So that is how we see in a normal plenty of structural. That's why inhomogeneous the distribution. So I wanted to show you now a bit less luminous active black hole, less luminous galaxy in the nucleus, as I refer. The former object was 10 to the 44 in volumetric luminosity. We are going here to 2 orders of magnitude less with this object. So we are getting the regime of low activity black hole in this case. And here, also a bit less active. It's just only 1 order of magnitude less luminous as regarding the previous one, but it's still an active black hole. Okay. And both images, here I show you in color the optical image and in contours the infrared image. So contrary to the former case, you might see that it's quite homogeneous. The infrared images and the optical image, we don't see these fingers of oscuration as we were seeing before. But if we do a ratio, infrared divided by optical, then we started to uncover what is exactly at the center. Nothing in the host, in the most of the galaxy, but at the center there is a lot of dust. And it's well structured. It's filamentary. And here you have a zoom of the central 100 parsecs or so of these regions. So it's filamentary, and contours is again the infrared light, the infrared galaxy, to point out where the nucleus is. This is a obscure nucleus. And you see all these filaments that, in addition, they are kind of circularizing to the center. This is what we define as a nuclear spiral in this low luminosity black hole. here is, yeah, we still have filamentary structure, but it seems to be, I don't know, it could be a disc H-on or maybe a spiral, nuclear spiral H-on, I don't know, or simply a filament crossing by. It's, the projection effect here obviously plays a role. Okay, so I'm going to, this is an extinction, fine. I wanted to go now to a two-stream case. So we have a very luminous active black hole. It's not yet a quasar, but very luminous. 10 to the 44 is super bright, the nucleus. And we have a very quiescent sombrero. Okay. So we are 2 orders of magnitude in the difference in luminosity of this nuclei. We do the ratio again. Remember, it's optical in color. Infrared image is in contours. We do the ratio, quite smooth in general. We do the ratio, and let's get into the central parsecs region. Let's here see directly in optical depth directly. So you see we uncover the filaments of obscuration of dust, one here, a bit circularizing, one here more straight. This nucleus is too bright, is really diffraction limit what we are given, so it's very hard to get very close to the center. And Andromeda is far less luminous, so we see a lot of dust as well into the center. And the nucleus is very clean. Maybe there is some dust passing by, but the optical depth is very low, so it's doing not much to the nucleus, and you have all basically in the plane of the galaxy. Look very much that you have a structure, maybe a disk, but wisely oriented in the plane of the galaxy and filamentary. Okay, so what about where does these filaments come from? Because some cases are very long, and we trace it to kilopascals distance. So I wanted to illustrate where this, to what distance we can trace these filaments of dust. And this is a good example. I always use that one. This is also a low activity black hole. This is a grand design spiral. It has a bar that comes from the north part of the disk, another bar that you see here from the south. It has a very famous circumnuclear star forming ring. This is all these pearls, bright sources here around, and the black hole at the center. Okay, so already one sees that the filamentary structure of the dust, these are all quite complicated roads around, but nonetheless collimated towards the center. You see one of them getting here in the ring, circularizing along the ring, the other bar, less obvious, the filaments, the dust getting towards the north. Okay, we zoom a bit, we see better the filaments here, more structure. Here they get into the center, and already you might see that into the ring, and already you might see into the center that they get in spiral form. And this is what we unveil here by removing the light of the galaxy, the stellar light of the galaxy. You see all the filaments now much better getting along the ring, and some of them circularizing to the center. This is what we call again a nuclear spiral, very well defined. It's one of the best because we almost see face on, is detected or is seen at the central few parsecs from the nucleus. This is a very low active black hole. It's emitting at 10 to minus 4 in Eddington luminosity, so very low activity. Okay. So that is no, I wanted to show you that, well, this no, I didn't show this one. In particular, there are many others, not always, but many cases we see these filaments running from the outer part of the disk all the way to the center. So these are active or less active black hole, as I showed you before. No, really, we can trace to very long distance, but these ones are active, low, medium activity. So you have, for example, here the filaments coming from the outer part of the disk already. You don't see more the disk. They open like in fingers. I see one filament here, another here, which you see better now. Zooming into the central 100 parsecs is now one filament, another close into the center. So, and there is dust for everything, that's for everywhere, and there is a good resupply of material from the external part of the galaxy or even from the outer part. There's nothing that we see here that these nuclear filaments are due effect of internal or local feedback, not at all. We have our supply of matter in most cases from the external part of the galaxy. We can trace it all the way to the central region. We are not seeing nothing special because the same is in our Milky Way. So, and that is the snapshot I took for these authors of Milky Way, different filaments here and there in different regions. Well, you see this wavy structure, collimated, narrow, long, the same. Okay. Let's go to the central parsec, which is what we are focusing now. And this is the central parsec of our galaxy. Sagittarius is here. And you have, again, this you see much more in detail, the filamentary structure, how the dust excretion is distributed here. But we can compare, our resolution is relatively good enough to start to compare with extragalactic systems. So you have one of the sample I just mentioned before. Medium activity black hole, Sagittarius is very low activity black hole. And you have again the filaments crossing the center, almost define a kind of loop here, very similar to what we have in Sagittarius, coincidentally only. Okay, so we go to our sister, which is Andromeda, is also a very, very low active black hole. As Sagittarius is emitting a 10 to minus 9 in Eddington luminosities, 10 minus 9 of his possible potential. And you have again all this filamentary structure as well, sort of circularizing. The pitch angle of these structures are getting closer and closer towards the center. Black hole is here. So whether we have again active or no active, we have plenty of material. This material tend to be structured in filaments, and these filaments sometimes we see more often in low active black holes settle in a kind of nuclear spiral, central parsecs. So what are the dynamics? Well, we say something of the dynamics because so far it has been quite descriptive. We do not have information of the kinematics of these obscuring filaments if we don't have a tracer on velocities. But nice enough when there is enough angular resolution to be compared with our dust maps in molecular gas, we found that the molecular gas is co-spatial with the filamentary structure we see, and it's also narrow and is have a morphology also of filament, exactly as we see in the dust maps. So here you have the active black hole I showed you at the beginning, and the tracer in molecular gas in H2, in warm H2 molecular gas. You see that it's not bad, it's follow nice the structure in dust. We have a low active black hole and also trace in this case from in CO, and it follows now the material, the molecular gas is now in contours. Here it was in blue, here in contours, so it follows as well more or less the filament, the structure, the nuclear spiral also, and here medium active black hole. Okay, it's less developed this spiral structure if you want, but still the scuration is filamentary, sometimes diffuse, but you have these filaments here and there, and we've seen in CO again also the filaments tracing a lot of structure we have in scuration, in dust. Okay, so if we have, that's a good thing because if we have the kinematics, we can have, and we have the morphology of the filaments, and we have, therefore we have the volume. We have a very good estimate of the mass because with the dust mass we measure column densities. So we can get, with the velocity of the molecular mass, we can get reasonable estimate of the inflow rate, at what rate material is falling towards the center, if it's falling towards the center, to what rate is getting toward the center. So for an active black hole, as I showed you at the beginning, these authors get a relatively high inflow rate, just 10 parsecs. The problem here is that the ideal is to get as close to the center, but resolution matters. So we get as close as we can. This is a high number as compared, nonetheless, a high number as compared with this case. This is a low active black hole again, is the one with the well-defined nuclear spirals. And here we can get down to almost 2 orders of magnitude less an inflow rate, still a high distance as compared with that. So I would expect that the inflow rate goes down, because a larger distance, we get higher inflow rate in the filaments, then we get closer distance, slow down. So it's nice because that this decrease, means that we lose angular momentum. That's good. And the next, in this case as well, we have almost all 2 orders of magnitude as compared to the active one. So inflow rate tend to go down depending on distance. Of course, we are limited by this. The possibilities. We do what we can simply, and we wanted to get to accretion, which is where it really we can estimate what is happening, what is the rate of material the black hole can potentially absorb. And then it's difficult in extragalactic because we cannot resolve the accretion disk or getting anything closer. So for the case of Andromeda, we resort to hydro simulations because in Andromeda, we have quite a number of constraints that limited the boundary conditions of these simulations. And then we could get a quite decent estimate of the inflow rate very close to the center. So we have the filament structure, the morphology, we have velocities as before, but we have the potential. We know very well the bar potential of this galaxy. We know where the filaments occur. So the way this hydro works, that we simply launch a mass of particles into the potential of the galaxy at to a certain distance, and we let it evolve to see what happens. It can happen many things. This mass cloud of material could dissolve, could form stars, could collimate it. Well, that we put all the physical process that would happen there, dissipation, star formation, etc. And seems that this depending of course of the mass we put, but in general we end up with certain conditions to produce a kind of orbits, is the one you see immediately at a few million years. We start to develop this mass of particles, start to develop in kind of filamentary structure, describing some orbits getting towards the center. They are dominated obviously by the potential of the galaxy. And after a few 100 million years, we end up with a kind of ring. And from that ring, we have in the center kind of a spiral structure, very filamentary as well, that with pitch angular that tend to close circularize to the center. I show you 2 snapshots. This is the same scale as you have here, although I compressed by show you the both, but there is indeed a circumnuclear ring in Andromeda where these filaments come from. Okay, so that is the closest we can get. It gets a stable solution for a number of years after, so we kept it that way. And of course, with simulations, we can estimate a very low inflow rate. Still, we are parsecs from the center, and which is in line with the low Eddington luminosity of this source. Luminosity in Eddington luminosity, which is around 10 to minus 9. So you see low Eddington luminosity ratio sources that emit a very low luminosity, again, tend to have a very low inflow rate. The same is done with Sagittarius A. This is the center of Sagittarius A. The green part is the molecular gas, is HCN in this case, traced. So you see a little bit sort of curvature in the filaments, again, turning towards the central region. In fact, in the community of the galactic center, this is known as the mini spiral. region. And again, you had to resort to hydro simulations, and different people had worked on that. Now you get a spatial radius because Sagittarius is very close to us, and you get a very low inflow rate. Still, we are not in the accretion disk, but very low inflow rate, which is in line also with the low luminosity of this source, 10 to minus 10 or 10 to minus 9 in Eddington region. So getting down in luminosity means getting down in inflow rate. And that is a compilation of sources that for what we get best values from active ones to getting down in activity to the lowest ones. Activity goes down. The luminosity in terms of Eddington is here getting down. And the inflow rate we are getting, in most cases, are upper limits because depends on the distance where we are measuring. But in general, there is a tendency to get down in inflow as we go in Eddington luminosity ratio. Okay. This is not really much of the solution to explain why these underluminous sources are so underluminous, because you say, well, they have very low inflow rate. Again, we had to get to the next frontier, which is the accretion disk, but which is where things matter. I will go now, but it might help a bit to start already before the accretion disk, to start already with low inflow rates. Interestingly, is that these low inflow rates start to develop when we see nuclear spirals as we get down in luminosity. So there is a kind of slowing of the flow produced by these nuclear spirals. So the accretion disk, as I said, we cannot resolve it. I cannot show you how it looks like. The only way in extragalactic we know how to tackle the accretion disk is by looking at the spectral energy distribution of the sources of these nuclei. And that is what I'm going to show you now. And I will show you first for an active black hole, and then from a quiescent black hole here down. And from an active black hole, I took again our quasar, our bright quasar 3C273. And this is the spectral distribution of this source from radio all the way to high energies. Here as well for the low active black hole from radio to high energies. And the blue points are our parsec scale resolution, in which we sample the spectral distribution of these sources in both cases, generally in all the cases we study. And the blue bump is, the accretion disk, which we interpreted as the signature accretion disk is a blue bump, what we call a blue bump in the spectral distribution, is blue, like we call it blue because happen in the UV X-rays region. So just here. So you see in this active black hole, there is this is the region from the optical, and here the UV. Here we have the X-rays, here the high energies. So the X-rays show a rising of the spectrum up. The optical UV also show a rising of the spectrum up. So at the end, you have a kind of bump here. In the middle, unfortunately, nature is no nice to us, because all these photons are, as you know, are absorbed by atom hydrogen in our galaxy. So we have a empty window. But well, the trend is particular from the optical UV is that a rise in the spectrum, and then this is what we call the blue bump, big blue bump here. Okay. Here I put, you might see in the straight lines are different elements, which is the lines we expect to see in the spectrum of quasars or active galactic nuclei, or also in low active sources, low active black holes. We have fundamental, mandatory, the ionization potential of hydrogen. We need as a minimum 30.6 electron volts. Okay, that is here. And we claim we produce all these photons and higher for higher ionization species. So we need all these photons to produce the species we saw, the ionization state we saw, and then the claim is that these are provided by the accretion disk. the blue bump. Now, we go now to the dormant black hole. This is the same location here, but we do not have such a bump, okay? And this is in general for always, this is a characteristic, this is common all the time, appears in dormant black holes. The optical UV is here in this SCD, goes down, does not go up. And we see it at the same wavelength as here, okay? Goes down. The high energies goes down, it does not rise up. So no way to form this peak. The black, what we always say is the accretion disk is gone, is disappeared, is very inefficient, or well, it's not like an active black hole. This is a main characteristic of low activity black holes. Okay. This is an example, but we see all the time. Oh, I jump or something else. We see all the time. This is a snap of different low activity black holes. Again, the spectral distribution for all of them from radio to high energies. The Y points are our Pascal scale SCDs. Okay. The orange line is the spectral distribution of active black hole, just to put on top to compare our quasar before. Here we have the blue bump. You see much better here. And you see that all of them, in no case we get to that bump, we go down. So it's quite systematic. Now, you might notice that, for example, we spot that case. We already, in this work with my colleague, Juan Antonio Fernando Tiveros, we already, that where we present all this, we spot some cases where we see a kind of bump. This is Sombrero Galaxy, okay? It's not at the same position as the radiolab quasar, as 3273, but it's a little bit towards the optical, okay? Towards the optical infrared. It's a kind of rising up as well in M87, but very subtle. Maybe in 1097 as well, subtle as 1096. Okay. The best case, we could spot this bump, which we could not fit with a straight line like in other cases. By the way, I never say that this straight line is simply synchrotron spectrum. All these low luminosity AGNs, we can associate the main emission as due to a jet. But anyway, I'm not going to talk about that because too much here. I wanted to emphasize the bump structure that appeared in Sombrero. And I would like to show you here in the next because it's better. We thought that this bump perhaps could be an accretion disk like in 3273 in the quasar, but a bit cooler, okay, shifted to the infrared. That was a speculation that we presented, but here you see why the root of that. Here again, the spectral distribution of the quasar. Again, the same plot I showed you before with the accretion disk fitting together with the synchrotron emission, the bump here, and here you have the same accretion. This is here. We put it here, and we try to fit the bump we see in the optical. Okay, which a priori fits well. Is that well, we have very good sampling, the optical and the UV, but we have very poor sample as we were going to the infrared from 1 micron on. So that is where GMWST data came to us and helped to us to get a better sample. We have these granted observations in cycle 1 with a project called REVEAL, low luminosity AGN, so low active black hole. These are all a bunch of low activity black holes. We cover different range of black hole masses. We wanted to study different activity levels, but in general they are very low active black holes. And with GMWST, the great thing is that you can sample all together from the near infrared 1 micron all the way until mid infrared at the 25 microns. So now for Sombrero, which is the spectrum here is in black, instead of having 3 points, we could take all the continuum emission, select the continuum emission all the way in this spectrum and sampling better our SCD. Okay. So that is what we do here. And here we have this again, the spectral distribution of Sombrero. And now the 3 points that we had before, they are converting all this sample of points from MIRI and NIRS. And we have a very good fitting of the bump now with much more constraint of the Sakura Sunyaev a disk we are fitting here. Okay. As compared with the accretion disk that we are fitting here, because it's exactly the same saturation disk is here. It's just that the temperature here in the disk is about 10 to the 5. This is the typical temperature, peak temperature on accretion disk in active black hole. And here we go down by an order of magnitude. So the accretion disk gets much cooler, it gets much bigger, a little bit much bigger, so therefore cooler. And then becoming cooler means less efficient. Energetically, there is less power here because the frequency, the energies that are sampled are lower. That here where we sample a region, particularly where the peak of the accretion disk is, of high energy photons. Okay? So that could explain somewhat how we are getting such a low luminosity black holes, so low activity, because the accretion disk simply recedes, gets cooler. Okay, and so another thing is why it gets that way. Maybe it's because we have a relatively low inflow rate, and that makes this material losing cooling more difficult, and therefore it does not get in the accretion disk, therefore it does not radiate efficiently. So there is big difference in power between the two. Okay, so we can produce with the accretion disk, as I say, all these lines, high ionization lines, but with this accretion disk, we cannot produce these lines because, as you see, it's shifted from the potential, the ionization potential, all these lines that we are spotting, okay? And we have them. So that is, I want to show you here the MIRI spectrum only of Sombrero, which is the red line, another low luminosity AGN, which is in the blue line, and in between, we published this in this year, beginning of this year, active black hole, okay, which is in the middle. So you might notice that there's plenty of, a lot of lines that are in common. There is no much difference in between the active and no active as is in the infrared. That was a surprise for us. We were not expecting that, but what we were not expecting at all is that we were seeing these high ionization lines, neon phi, which they are here, does not appear the other neon phi, but we have in other part in the near infrared, we have other high ionization lines. These we were not expecting for these low active black holes, but they are there. Okay, so, and this is not produced. This cannot, in principle, with this simplistic scenario, we cannot produce with a accretion disk. So the idea, and we speculate here a bit, is that the photons that we have in the jet, because we are fitting a jet emission, and this is the quantonized part of the synchrotron emission. This is the injection, cooling of synchrotron, and quantonized spectrum that get into the high energies, and there are photons here. And these photons can produce these lines. And this is the work that is now leading my colleague, Juan Antonio Fernández to show that this might be the case. This is the case that we can produce, not with accretion disk, but with the jet itself. So that is all what I wanted to show to you. I just finished. I come back to my first transparency. So this is an ambitious, I intend to make an ambitious link between such a high powerful source, such a low activity black holes. There is 9 order of magnitude here, 8 order of magnitude here in difference in accretion. This is enormous. But as regarding material, there is material for all of them. They don't need to starve. There is something to eat all the time. And it's nothing that is requiring to be produced in the galaxy, this material, because they have a good reservoir already from the outer part of the galaxy. So material gets down, not always, but we see that it's getting down from the outer part, kilopasses all the way to the center. This material is quite filamentary, has a certain morphology. And we notice that when we get into this low activity black holes, these nuclear spirals tend to appear. And so we think that this is a way to slow the flow, but still we had to look in the accretion disk. And the idea with the accretion disk that was that the in low luminosity and low activity black holes, our accretion disk that we see in quasars is simply gets cooler. It moves to the infrared and therefore less efficient. The energetic budget is very low, and so we have the low radiative nuclei that are always associated to low activity black hole. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Almudena, for your nice talk. Do we have questions or comments? We start with Arianna.
Thank you, Almudena, for the very, very interesting talk. So I was wondering if you plan to do a study of this as a function of mass for different mass of galaxies, and if you plan to find any difference in this scenario of dormant black holes and the type of accretion disk that you get. That's one question. Then I have a very general one. I'm sorry if it's a silly question, but is there any consensus of where do we define a galaxy to be active? At what inflow rate? I'm always asked this question myself, and when students ask me, I don't know what to reply. Is there, for example, a galaxy accreting at 10 to the minus 3 solar masses per year? Is it active? Does it depend on the galaxy mass? We have some simulation in which a very small dwarf accrete at the rates, and I would call that active. But is that active if it's a Milky Way type galaxy accrete at the rate? So I'm sorry if it's a general question.
Yes, 10 to minus 3 we define as a kind of intermediate, what I call a medium active black hole. Nature does not make breaks. Nature makes transitions. So 10 to minus 3 is the transition between active, medium active to low activity. When we see low activity, and by the way, 10 to minus 3, I saw objects in the spectral distribution that were in this range, 10 to minus 3. Yeah, it is not the case of Sombrero. The accretion disk is gone. In the sense of what I said before, the spectral distribution, so very particular characteristic. The blue bump is gone. If you studied a sufficient angular resolution, because otherwise you can get contaminated by emission from the galaxy very easy. The black body and a blue bump are quite similar, and the galaxy population could be also a black body. So one has to be careful. So there is the transition. When you go into this transition, usually we characterize the low active black holes because in general has been done classically in the optical, because the ratio, the luminosity of the lines, the emission lines are low and present very low excitation. So it's not a typical high excitation like in H2 region or 3 over H beta very large, or in Seyfert galaxies or 3 H beta very large. The initiation lines are boosted also. That is another way to characterize low activity black hole. It comes usually, are more identified those as liners. Maybe it gets more familiar to you, but at that level. That is because it's done in the optical. But you see, these ones in the infrared have high ionization lines. So we have in a new paradigm. It was a very surprise for us. We were not expecting, I would say, with the GMWST to see that. We were having a bit of suspicion, but we were not expecting that. This is really a new way of seeing these low activity black holes. And for me, is that the relatively are very inefficient mechanically is where the channel of releasing energy is, which I didn't know. These are powerful jet-dominated sources. So it's not the relative channel for releasing energy, it's mechanical, kinetic power. And respect to the masses, well, it's so hard to study these sources. We cannot be selective in mass of the galaxies, but we try with generosity to cover a wide range of galaxies. In morphological type, there's no different. In black hole mass was obviously the main thing to check. Even in activity level, because we have a dwarf there in the sample, quite active, but low black hole mass. I do not see any difference. We have 87, enormous, sombrero, enormous. Our Milky Way is not so massive, it's a spiral. So you see, a priori, I don't see major difference.
More and more AGNs in dwarfs if you plan to
Well,
focus a little bit on
yeah,
the
we are
smallest one.
we are in that way as well. Yes, we are in that way because if we want to, but it's another thing. That's the problem. If black holes, the pseudo black holes are in dwarfs because they are small black holes, are very hard to detect black holes. They are low mass. They need to be active. And as I say, activity is very scarce. But we have certain ways to think we can spot it. And I think now with the detection of coronal lines is our way. It's our way.
Okay, maybe
I am Modena. Great talk. So I am very
Yes.
interested in coronal
Yeah.
lines and trying to characterize agent activity, especially in Euler's. So, if I understand what you said at the end, the best way would be then to combine detecting the neon 5 line at 14 microns with VLA radio observations to try to link the coronal line detection and see if we have some radio source there that could be the jet that is mechanically driving those. Is that a way of trying to link that with AGN or not? Or this is something
No,
different?
no, we are not doing, we are doing that when we have enough angular resolution in the coronal line to see whether it's excited by the jet. We could have done that a very low redshift sources and no very low activity, intermediate activity. Then we see the coronal line because the coronal gas high incision is always very radial. It's not dominated by rotation. That is great. And we see associated with nodes in the jet. That is why we know that these lines are boosted, excited by the jet mechanic, and we can measure directly the mechanical power. That's we know that in a few cases, very few, mechanical is the way of moving energy in these sources. And the way we are doing that now with this neon 5, there are other ones. I didn't want to show the because too much information. Other coronal lines is that we are doing diagrams of like a BPT diagrams, but this with coronal lines. In particular with neon, we can use only neon. This is what is doing now Juan Antonio Fernandez, beautiful, and we can explain the excitation of this gas. Just this ionizing continuum due to the jet.
Okay, so
No by the creation this, no.
yeah. So in summary, what people used to say that the coronal lines, the neon 5 especially, was the gold standard of finding AGN is not necessarily true. It could be, but
because you don't want to call sombrero an AGN.
yeah.
But maybe it's an AGN not because it's relatively powerful, because it's mechanically powerful. So well, it's a bit more a big picture here. We had to start to evolve. The paradigm becomes a little bit more extensive.
Yeah.
You people will say sombrero, MTC, nothing. Well, it's not. It's a lot.
Okay, thank you.
thank you, John.
Yes, it's interesting that you found very low inflow and very low correlated with very low luminosity, which is good. But do you have any physical explanation? That is to say, what is stopping, if there's a lot of material flowing around, what's stopping it from going in? I mean, is it the geometry? Is it magnetic field? So what is it? I mean, do you have any idea?
Yeah, The idea, vaguely, not very good one. It's simply that I tend to see this this structural form of nuclear spiral precisely when I tend to see low luminosity agents. So I think the nuclear spirals really slow the flow. The hydro simulations we did with Andromeda show that too. And in other cases, we can see the inflow slowing as we get to the center along the filaments. Okay, so the nuclear spirals do something, do really slow the center. Why? Maybe it's magnetic field. Maybe it's arresting the flow, because these nuclear spirals, in this case, that is NGC 1097, you colleague, follow nicely in the magnetic field. You follow all the magnetic field lines there. So it could be
I think I always thought the problem was not why material doesn't fall in, but why it
it's
does.
slow. Oh,
Because it's the moment of the angular momentum interchange problem, and that really must have a clue. And why do the spirals form? And so,
how is getting loose moment? Yeah, maybe because they're narrow filament. I think there might be a lot of shear in between. So you
Yeah.
release
yeah,
energy, because we see them emitting in the far infrared as emitting sources. So maybe it's shear, maybe it's the magnetic field as well. They act as a counter pressure to.
okay. Well,
It needs to be explored. Yes.
Good. Nice. Sorry, I'm confused, but you have simulations, right? You can go and look what is the physical mechanism at play and stopping the material to fall in, or I mean whether it's a magnetic field, or you can go and look in the simulation whether there is a magnetic field or not.
No, in Andromeda, we didn't introduce any magnetic field.
Oh.
That's the truth. In Andromeda, what happened is that we have many constraints settled by the observations, and then in a natural form, this mass that they put in the potential develop the orbits that we saw. We didn't impose anything, and we put friction, we put dissipation, we put all the possibilities you have in the interstellar medium of a galaxy to act, and probably they all work together to really form these nuclear spirals and slow the center, towards the center.
Okay, thank you, Almudena. Let me check if there's any question online. I don't think so. So anyway, so thank you very much again. Let's
Thank
thank her again for a beautiful talk.
Thank you, Carmen.
And I think we can all go for lunch if you haven't done so yet. And the students can come to write down your names.